Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. We like to keep you up to date on all the latest health and wellness news, and there's a new development that we just have to talk about today.
Definitely.
The FDA has issued a Class 2 recall for Duloxetine.
Oh, wow.
You might know it as Cymbalta Drosoma Sprinkle or Irenca.
Yeah, that's a pretty big one. And actually, over 7,100 bottles are affected by this recall.
7,100! That's a lot of medication. What's going on with this?
So the culprit behind this recall is nitrosamines.
Okay, nitrosamines. Now, I've heard that term before, but honestly, I don't really know much about them.
Yeah, they're these chemical compounds that have been causing a bit of a stir in the pharmaceutical world lately because research has linked them to some pretty serious health risks, like an increased risk of cancer, particularly lung cancer.
That's really concerning, especially if they're found in a medication that so many people rely on.
Right. And what's interesting is that the FDA is still investigating the source of the contamination in this case. So it's not a simple open and shut case.
So there's still a lot to uncover here. But before we dive deeper into the nitrosamine mystery, I want to take a step back and make sure we're all on the same page.
Sure.
Can you break down what a Class 2 recall actually means? Is
Yeah.
this a situation where everyone needs to panic and stop taking their medication immediately?
Okay, so a Class 2 recall means that there's a potential for temporary but reversible adverse health consequences from the product.
Okay, so not a total panic situation.
Exactly. Not a reason to freak out, but definitely a reason to pay attention and talk to your doctor.
That makes sense. So it's serious enough to warrant action, but not necessarily a reason to clear the shelves.
Right. It's about finding that balance between caution and informed decision-making.
All right, so we've got this Class 2 recall for duloxetine because of these nitrosamines. But why duloxetine? Is there something about this specific medication that makes it more susceptible to this contamination?
Well, it's not so much about duloxetine itself, but more about how widely it's used. It's prescribed for a whole range of conditions, from major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder to diabetic neuropathy pain, fibromyalgia, and even chronic muscle and joint pain.
Wow, that's a lot of people potentially affected by this recall.
Exactly. That's why it's such a big deal.
Okay, so the more people taking a medication, the bigger the potential impact of a recall.
You got it.
All right, so we've established that this recall is significant because duloxetine is so widely prescribed. But now I'm really curious about these nitrosamines. You mentioned they can damage DNA, which sounds pretty terrifying. How do they even end up in medications in the first place? Is this just a case of sloppy manufacturing practices?
It's actually more complicated than that. While manufacturing processes can play a role, nitrosamines can also form during the storage of the medication. And get this, they can even form within our own bodies as we break down food and medicine.
Wait, hold on. Our bodies can actually create these harmful compounds?
It's a bit unsettling, isn't it? It turns out it's not just about what we ingest, but also how our bodies process those substances.
So even if we're super careful about choosing our medications, we could still be exposed to nitrosamines through our diet or just through normal bodily processes.
It really highlights the complexity of this whole issue. It's like this intricate dance between external factors and our internal chemistry.
Okay, so this nitrosamine thing is way more complex than I initially thought. And the fact that they're showing up in medications like duloxetine raises some serious red flags. Have there been other recalls related to this issue?
You're right to be concerned. And actually, yes, this isn't an isolated incident. We've seen similar recalls for other medications like metformin and valsartan due to nitrosamine contamination.
So this is starting to look like a pattern, a worrying trend in the pharmaceutical industry.
Absolutely. It definitely raises questions about the broader landscape of pharmaceutical safety and what steps need to be taken to protect patients.
It feels like we're just scratching the surface here. There's this whole bigger picture emerging about how these tiny molecules are impacting our medications and potentially our health.
You're spot on. And that's exactly what we'll be exploring in part 2 of our deep dive. We'll go deeper into the science of nitrosamines, how they form, and what their presence in medications means for us as patients.
I can't wait to learn more. This is one of those topics that makes you realize how much we still don't know.
For sure.
We'll be back with part 2 soon, so stay tuned.
Welcome back. Glad to be continuing this conversation about nitrosamines. We were just starting to uncover some of the complexities of this issue in part 1.
Yeah, and one thing that really stuck with me was the idea that nitrosamines can actually form within our own bodies. How is that even possible?
That's a fascinating process, right? These nitrosamines, they aren't just lurking in our medications. They can also be created through a chemical reaction between compounds called amines and nitrites.
Okay, amines and nitrites. And where do we encounter those?
Well, you can find them in various places, but one common source is food. For example, processed meats often contain nitrates, which can react with amines in our stomachs during digestion.
Oh, wow. So even if we're super careful about the medications we're taking, we could still be exposed to nitrosamines through our diet.
It's true. It highlights how interconnected these things are. It's not just about avoiding one specific pill or one specific food. It's about understanding this broader picture of how these compounds form and how we can minimize our exposure from multiple angles.
Okay, so it's about making informed choices across the board, both in terms of what we eat and the medications we take.
Right. And speaking of informed choices, what are your thoughts on the FDA's response to this whole nitrosamine situation? What steps are they taking to address this issue and prevent future contamination?
That's a great question.
Hmm.
I've heard they've been issuing guidance to manufacturers, but what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, one of the key things they're doing is requiring manufacturers to implement stricter quality control measures throughout the entire manufacturing process. That includes using specific analytical techniques to detect even tiny trace amounts of nitrosamines.
So it's about catching these contaminants before they even have a chance to make it into the medications we're taking.
Exactly. It's a proactive approach to prevent contamination rather than just reacting to problems after they've occurred.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm assuming it's not just about testing. They're probably also looking at ways to improve the manufacturing process itself, right?
Absolutely. The FDA is encouraging manufacturers to explore alternative manufacturing processes and formulations that are less likely to result in nitrosamine formation.
So they're essentially saying, hey, let's rethink how we make these medications from the ground up to minimize the risk of contamination.
You got it. And it's not just about tweaking the existing processes. Some manufacturers are even going a step further and reformulating drugs by adding pH modifiers and antioxidants, which have been shown to inhibit nitrosamine formation.
Oh, wow. So they're actually changing the chemical makeup of the medications to make them safer.
It's a fascinating area of research because it really highlights how intricate this whole thing is. Like you're trying to balance the effectiveness of a drug with its safety profile. And sometimes even small changes in the formulation can have a big impact on both.
It's like a delicate balancing act.
Exactly. And this duloxetine recall, it really serves as a wake-up call for both the pharmaceutical industry and regulatory bodies. It's a reminder that patient safety needs to be the top priority.
Couldn't agree more.
Mm-hmm.
So in light of all of this, what can we as patients do to protect ourselves and be more proactive about our medication safety?
I'm a big believer that knowledge is power, especially when it comes to our health. So my number one piece of advice is to stay informed.
Okay, stay informed. What does that look like in practice?
Well, it can involve things like reading medication labels, carefully staying updated on health news from reliable sources, and don't be afraid to ask your doctor or pharmacist questions. You have the right to know what you're putting into your body.
That makes perfect sense. And I think sometimes we forget that we have a voice.
Mhm.
We don't have to just passively accept whatever medication is prescribed. We can ask questions and advocate for ourselves.
Absolutely. And if you do experience any adverse effects from a medication, don't hesitate to report it to the FDA's MedWatch program.
Hmm.
That information can be incredibly valuable in helping them track potential problems and take appropriate action.
That's a great reminder. Our experiences can actually contribute to making medications safer for everyone.
It's a collective effort. And speaking of collective effort, we've been talking a lot about conventional medications, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on alternative therapies.
Oh, yeah. That's something I've been thinking about, too.
Yeah.
With all these concerns about nitrosamines and medications, are you seeing more people turning to herbal remedies or other alternative approaches?
Yeah, actually we are. And it makes sense, right? When people get worried about the safety of conventional medications, they naturally start to look for other options.
Yeah.
And the source material we looked at even mentions like the herbal formula that some people might find interesting as an alternative.
Interesting. But I guess it's important to remember that just because something is natural doesn't automatically mean it's safe or effective, right?
You're absolutely right. Herbal remedies can still have potent effects, and they can interact with other medications just like conventional drugs can. So it's crucial to have an open and honest conversation with your doctor before making any changes to your treatment plan.
So it's not about choosing a side, conventional versus alternative. It's about having an informed conversation with your healthcare provider and finding the best approach for your individual needs.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Mm.
It's about personalized healthcare and recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
I feel like we've covered so much ground in this part, but I also have a feeling that we've only scratched the surface of this whole nitrosamine issue. What are your final thoughts as we wrap up part 2?
I think this duloxetine recall, while definitely concerning It also presents us with an opportunity. It's a chance to become more informed, more engaged, and more empowered as healthcare consumers. It's a reminder that we have a voice and that we can advocate for ourselves and for safer medications.
I love that perspective. It's not about placing blame. It's about taking ownership and working towards a better future.
Exactly. And that's what we'll be diving into in part 3. We'll explore the broader implications of this issue, the ongoing research, and what it all means for our understanding of health and well-being in the years to come.
Sounds like a conversation I don't want to miss. We'll be back with part 3 soon, so stay tuned.
All right, we're back for the final part of our deep dives into this duloxetine recall and the whole nitrosamine situation. We've gone pretty deep into the science and the regulations, but I think it's time to step back and really consider the broader implications of all this. Yeah, I agree. This whole thing, it's really a Pandora's box. It's not just about one drug or one recall. It's about a much bigger conversation about pharmaceutical safety, food safety, and even our own internal chemistry. It all kind of ties together.
Exactly. And, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to make sure our listeners walk away with some tangible takeaways. What are some of the most important things people should keep in mind as they navigate this complex landscape of medication safety?
Well, I think a big takeaway is that we can't just sit back and rely on external authorities to guarantee our safety. We have a personal responsibility to be informed and engaged in our own healthcare decisions.
So it's about taking ownership, empowering ourselves to be active participants in our own health journey.
Exactly. It's about asking questions, doing our research, and advocating for ourselves. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as reading medication labels, carefully staying updated on health news from reliable sources, and having open and honest conversations with our doctors.
Those are all great points. So it really makes you think about what other options there might be for supporting our mental and physical well-being. And this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The Lost Book of Herbal Remedies actually presents this unique formula that's designed to address those needs,
Interesting.
especially in the context of these concerns that we're seeing with this recall.
Okay, now you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
Let's dive into this herbal formula.
Okay.
With all this talk about these potential contaminants, it makes me think about how our bodies actually deal with these substances.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Our bodies have these natural detoxification processes. And this formula actually incorporates herbs that are known to support those processes.
So it's not just about managing the symptoms of anxiety or depression,
No.
but it's also about helping the body cleanse itself
Right.
of these potentially harmful substances. I love that.
Yeah.
So tell me more about these herbs. What's in this formula?
So it's a blend of 7 different herbs, each with their own unique properties.
Okay.
We'll start with St. John's wort.
Okay.
It's been used for centuries in traditional medicine for treating mild to moderate depression.
Huh.
And it's thought to work by increasing the levels of serotonin in the brain.
Serotonin, that's that feel-good chemical that we were talking about before, right?
Exactly. The one that duloxetine also affects.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it's really important to remember that herbal remedies aren't direct replacements
of course.
for prescription medications.
Right.
And they should always be discussed with your doctor.
Right. Safety first.
Yes, always.
Okay, so what else is in this herbal blend?
Next up, we have rhodiola rosea. Rhodiola, it's a powerful adaptogen.
That's an adaptogen.
Yeah, so adaptogens essentially help your body cope with stress more effectively.
Yeah.
And rhodiola in particular is really good at reducing fatigue, improving mental clarity, and making you more resilient to stress.
So given all the stress that can come from something like a medication recall,
Mm,
rhodiola seems like it could be pretty helpful.
absolutely.
What else is in this fascinating mix?
We also have ashwagandha,
Okay.
another powerful adaptogen with a really long history of use in Ayurvedic medicine.
Cool.
Ashwagandha is known for regulating your cortisol levels.
Cortisol, that's our stress hormone, right?
You got it.
I've definitely heard that too much cortisol is not a good thing.
It's not, no, it's all about balance.
Right.
So by keeping those cortisol levels nice and balanced, ashwagandha can help promote feelings of calm and well-being.
Okay.
It can improve sleep quality, and it can even boost your cognitive function.
Wow.
And then there's lemon balm. Lemon balm is this wonderfully calming herb that's been used for centuries to soothe anxiety, promote relaxation, and improve sleep.
Lemon balm. I've actually had that in tea before.
It's lovely.
Yeah, it's really nice.
It's so gentle but effective.
So we've got some herbs for mood support and stress management.
Yeah.
What about the detoxification aspect you mentioned before?
Right.
Which herbs in this formula actually help with that?
So we have milk thistle, which is really well known for its liver protective properties.
Okay.
Our liver is like our main detoxification organ, right? It filters out all sorts of harmful substances from our blood,
Right.
including those nitrosamines that we were talking about earlier.
Right.
So milk thistle comes in and it helps to support the liver function.
Okay.
And it kind of enhances its ability to clear out all those toxins.
So milk thistle's like the cleanup crew, making sure everything is running smoothly.
Exactly. I love that.
I like it too. And
Those are the last two ingredients.
the formula also includes curcumin,
Okay.
which is the active compound in turmeric.
It's a really potent antioxidant and anti-inflammatory agent.
Mm.
And it also supports those liver detoxification pathways that we were talking about.
And the last one.
And last but not least, we have green tea extract.
Oh, nice.
It is loaded with antioxidants,
Okay.
especially these compounds called catechins, which protect our cells from damage and aid in detoxification.
Wow.
It also provides this really gentle energy boost thanks to the small amount of caffeine that it has in it.
So this formula really does take a holistic approach, addressing both the mental and physical aspects of well-being. A pretty fascinating blend of ingredients.
It is.
Before we move on, though, I just want to reiterate, and I know we've said it before, but it is important.
Yeah.
This is not a substitute for medical advice.
Right.
If you're having concerns about the duloxetine recall, or if you're thinking about trying any new herbal remedies, please talk to your healthcare provider.
Absolutely.
They can guide you based on your individual needs and your medical history.
Yes, they know best. Herbs can be powerful allies for our health, but it's so essential to use them responsibly and with the guidance of a qualified professional,
Sure.
especially if you're taking other medications because interactions can occur.
Right. Always err on the side of caution and talk to your doctor.
Absolutely.
And remember, you can find the full details on this herbal formula, as well as all those research articles we've mentioned over at herbalbloom.org.
Yes.
We encourage you to delve deeper and continue learning.
Yeah.
But for now, let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've discussed and see what insights we can gather from this deep dive. So we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
The duloxetine, recall the concerns about nitrosamines, and then this really fascinating herbal formula from the Lost Book of Herbal Remedies. What stands out to you most?
You know, it's really fascinating to me how this whole situation highlights the interconnectedness of our health.
Right.
We can't just focus on treating the symptoms.
Yeah.
We have to think about the bigger picture, you know?
The whole picture.
Mental, physical, and even how our bodies process and eliminate these potential toxins.
I totally agree. It's about taking that proactive and holistic approach to well-being.
Absolutely.
That's where this herbal formula really caught my attention.
Yeah.
It's not just about alleviating the anxiety or the depression,
Yeah.
but it's also about supporting those natural detoxification processes in the body.
Exactly. It's like having multiple tools in your toolbox.
Yeah.
You have conventional pharmaceuticals, which can be really effective for certain conditions.
Right.
But you also have these traditional remedies that have been used for centuries to support overall health and well-being, and often with a focus on preventing problems before they even arise.
And it seems like there's a growing interest in exploring those traditional remedies, especially with all the concerns that we've been talking about with pharmaceuticals.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's about empowering ourselves with knowledge
Yeah.
and exploring all of the options that are available to us.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with this question. Could we benefit from combining the best of both worlds? Modern scientific knowledge and the wisdom of these traditional herbal remedies.
I think that's such an insightful question.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen how this herbal formula incorporates these ingredients that target both the mental and the physical aspects of well-being,
Right.
potentially offering support in situations where pharmaceuticals might raise concerns. It's such a fascinating area for further exploration, for sure.
And it all comes back to is you can find all those details about this herbal formula and all the research that we talked about today over at herbalbloom.org.
Yes.
We encourage you to keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep taking an active role in your own health journey.
It's all about making informed choices that empower you to live your healthiest and happiest life.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and be well.